keeps reminding us that ye may believe. So the miracles are written that ye may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and believing you might have life through his name. So you have to believe, and then you get life. So that's what I'm going to talk about today is life. So most of the time in stories, there's a good person and a bad person, right? A good story always has a good person, a bad person. In your movies, there's always a good character and a bad character. So we kind of assume that in the Bible, we kind of assume that Jesus came to make bad people good, right? When sometimes that does happen, but when you children get older, you realize there's a lot of good people not going to go to heaven, because what do you need to go to heaven? You need life. You need Jesus. So some people don't understand that. So it's not good enough just to be good. If you don't have Jesus, then you don't have life. Therefore, if you don't have life, you go down. So we do not want to make that happen. So what is Jesus' ultimate goal here on earth, if it isn't to make bad people good? What's his goal? To save us, and more or less to make dead people come alive, right? So remember the story that I had last week. What did Jesus do with the widow's son? He raised him from the dead, right? So now I've been to a lot of funerals, and I have never experienced this. Have any of you guys? Does that give us a reason not to believe in Jesus if we've never seen it? It doesn't. Now, what if we go to a funeral and we see it happen? Would that give us a reason not to believe in Jesus? It could happen, right? One time, Apostle Paul was preaching a long sermon, and there was a whole house full, and they were up in the third story, and a young boy sat in the window. It probably had the window open. He sat there. Because it was a long sermon, he fell out the window. He fell asleep, and he fell out the window. What did Paul do? Well, they went down to see if he's okay, and they scooped him up. The boy had died, it says. Paul said, "Don't be troubled, for life is in him." And the people took the young man home alive, and they were greatly comforted. So it can happen. Even after Jesus left, it can happen. So still, the main key is believe in Jesus, whether it happens or not, right? Make sure it's Jesus. So Romans 8 goes on to explain, if the Spirit of God dwells in you, that same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead will also quicken your mortal body. So that same Spirit will give you life. So that's what Jesus ultimately claimed for, to make dead people alive, okay? So we're going to turn to, actually, I'm going to read Ephesians chapter 2 a little bit so you guys can, to explain that a little more. So even when we were dead in sins, right? We're dead in sins, he quickened us together with Christ. Because like you say, we're saved by grace. We were dead in sin. He died for our sins. Now we are saved. He has raised us together to make us sit in heavenly places in Jesus Christ, that in the ages to come he might show us the exceeding riches of his grace in his kindness toward us through Jesus Christ. There's no other way we can do it except through Jesus Christ. Then it goes on to say, for by grace are ye saved through faith. It's not of yourself. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. For we are his workmanship, created to do good works. So you say, but wait a minute, I thought you said good works and bad works don't matter. Well, see, that's not what saves us. So Jesus Christ saves us, but then after we're saved, good works will come, should come. So that's the whole thing I'm going to be teaching on today, is in Mark chapter 4 about good soil, bad soil, the seed. Mark chapter 4. So Jesus began to teach by the seaside, and there was gathered unto him a great multitude. There were many people. So that he entered into a ship, sat in the sea, and the whole multitude was by the sea on the land. Different parables, Jesus starts off this way, that he had to go into a ship to teach. Why do you children think he had to go into a ship? away from the people.
People were so many that he had nowhere to go but in the water.
And they got the hint that if they're sick and they touch Jesus, they would get healed. So guess how many people were pushing and shoving and trying to get their sick people to Jesus. So people were probably just, it was a lot of chaos. So in order to probably stop that, he went out on a ship away from everyone so everyone could hold still for a minute to realize what he's saying. Because in this one, he has an important message to teach. And he taught them many things by parables. And he said, "Hearken, behold, there went out a sower to sow." So a sower went out to sow some seed. And these are they by the wayside where the word is sown, and when they have heard, Satan cometh and steals it away. So the wayside was a path that people walked on, or it was hard, cracked soil, and the seed couldn't penetrate. So if you'd scatter the seed across it, it would lay on top, and then it says the birds would come and pick it away because it was easy for the birds to get to it. It wasn't protected, was just laying on top. It could not penetrate, could not grow. So some of it fell there, then some of it fell on stony ground. So the stony ground, if you sprinkle some seed across the stones, it'll have a little bit of dirt and the seeds will start to grow. But then as soon as the sun comes up, what happens? The seeds die because they don't have enough root to get the water and the moisture. So they sprouted, but they died again. They withered. Then he said, some fell among thorns, and those grew up. But then it says, some fell among thorns, and the thorns choked it, and it could not yield any fruit. So it did grow, but the thorns, when it reached a certain height, choked it out, and it didn't grow fruit. Now, who knows this parable? Who knows the next one, the seed that fell on good soil? Well, how much fruit did it produce? Produce what? Some 30, some 60, and some 100. So what that means, he threw down one seed, and when it grew up, from that one seed, there could have been 30 more seeds, or maybe 60 or 100. That's an unheard of yield. If you would put down one kernel of corn and you get 100 kernels, that's a good fold. You'd have a good crop. We could all be farmers if it would continue to yield like that. But just like this year, with all the rain, some of the farmers don't even have all their crops out. Then the fields flood like yesterday, and it kills the crops. So there's a lot of that goes on, and to have good soil to plant on is very important. So then he told them, "He that has ears to hear, let him hear." Do all of you children have your ears on this morning? I don't see anyone missing without any ears. Is that what Jesus meant? Did some of his people not have any ears? What do you think he meant by that? He meant, are you listening? Do you understand what I'm saying, right? So they did not understand. They said, could you explain it to us? Like they knew what it meant to farm, but they didn't know how to apply it to their lives. What do you mean by this? So he goes on to explain. He said, the sower soweth the word. So in this parable, we think of the good and the bad. Is the sower a good person or a bad person? He's sowing the word. A good person, exactly. Now, we would say the sower would be who? The word is what? What is I said it wrong. The seed is what? Is the word, right? So the sower, who wrote the word? Who wrote the Bible? God. So God is the sower here. He's throwing out the seed. The seed is the Bible, right? Now he says, these are they by the wayside where the word is sown, but when they have heard, Satan comes immediately and taketh away the word that was sown in their heart. So we sow the word, and the people with hard hearts, the word doesn't penetrate, right? Can you children think of anyone in the Bible that had a hard heart? Pharaoh. That's exactly the first person I thought of too. What did Moses came to said, let my people go. He said, okay, you can go. The next day, his heart was hard. It took him 10 times, and guess what? He still didn't learn. He ended up drowning in the sea. He had a very hard heart. So what happened? Every time the seed was sowing, something came and plucked it away, right? Now, who is plucking away all the seeds? The birds. And what do the birds represent? Good or bad? Bad. That represents Satan. So you see, we have the good, we have the bad. We have the good, we have the bad. And as we go through life, pretty soon you children will see a pattern, a cycle. And it won't take you long to put two and two together. So they go on, and then, so that's the first one. It doesn't penetrate. What about the second one? Can you think of any people who have heard the word, who have even been to church, who have heard the word preached, they start to grow, but then all of a sudden something happens and it dies. I heard a story one time when what happens is us Christians sometimes portray a wrong gospel message. We say, if you accept Jesus, he'll make your life better, right? Well, that's the wrong view. Then they come in and think I'm going to go to church so my life is better, and hard things come. They say, well, my life is not better. So I'll give you a little story. There was this guy who was going to go on an airplane ride, and they said, well, if you put on this parachute, it will make your ride way better. He said, okay, I like more convenience. I'll put on this parachute. He puts on this parachute, and it's hot, it's stuffy, it's big. He sits in his seat, it's bulky. He's thinking, man, this is not more pleasant. Why did they make me put on a parachute? And the waitress there sees he's uncomfortable and he's sweaty because he's hot. She says, could I bring you a cold glass of water? He says, sure. And as she's bringing this cold glass of water, his cords are hanging on the ground. She trips over it, spills the glass of water on him, and he says, that's it, I'm done. He throws the parachute, he walks off the plane. He says, there was no pleasure in that, right? But now, if someone would have explained to him that there is 100% chance that this plane is going to crash, right? Last time I checked, there's 100% chance we're all going to die. There's no getting out of it. Now, if someone would have said, you put this parachute on, and there are going to be times when it's uncomfortable. You're going to get hot. You're going to get thirsty. The cords are bulky. But if you keep it on, and when you hear that motor die, all you have to do is open the window, jump out, and you're not trusting in your good works. You are trusting in the parachute at this point to save you. This guy would say, well, that's easy. That's not hard to put on this parachute and go through all this uncomfortable stuff if it saves me, right? So exactly like us, we'll lose some friends when we go through life, but in the end, if Jesus saves us from our sins, it's all worth it. Persecution and things come. Let's not wither away. Let's get our roots deep. Now, these that fell among the thorns, they put their roots pretty deep, but what happened? They didn't get fruit. And what happens there, the cares of the world, the deceitfulness of riches, the lusts of other things choked out the word. So be careful who you hang around with. You don't want bad influences. You want to produce fruit, right? Now, these are they which are sown on good ground. That's this kind. They're sown on good ground. They hear the word, they receive it, and it brings forth fruit. Some 30, some 60, some 100. So some people have different talents, different gifts, but that's okay. Well, let's use them where we can, and let's use them for God. So the important lesson to learn here that there are many true and false Christians, right? We have to, in the story, so let me just put it this way. In Matthew 7, there's another parable who talks about seed being sown. This time, Jesus is sowing the good seed, and instead of the seed being the word in the next parable in Matthew, the seed is people, right? So Jesus is sowing the seed, and he says he sows it in a field. The field represents the world. So he puts these people in the world, and we are called wheat. Then Satan comes and puts his own seed, his own people in there, and they are called tares. Now, in the same field in the world, you have the wheat and the tares growing together. And the angels came to Jesus and said, should we go weed the garden? How many of you would love to have an angel weed your garden right now? They're growing like crazy, right? God said, no, because the tares are so intermingled with the wheat, if you pull them up, you will also pluck up the wheat. So if we look at it today, do you know any Christians or believers that are married to non-believers, right? They're so intermingled, if he takes one, it would tear the other one up. So he said, I have an idea. Let the two grow together, and when it's harvest time, then I will take off the good fruit. So when a combine comes through, what does he do? He takes off the top of the fruit, right? And it goes into his chute, and he stores it in his barn. What happens with the other stuff that's left behind? So they didn't have combines back then, so some of the good stuff fell on the ground. So you're right, the widows would come and pick up the good stuff, but the bad stuff, they didn't have a baler to make straw, so they would just burn it. So they didn't want the chaff. The chaff would get burnt. So, and all the weeds would get burnt with it. So we don't want to end up a bad weed or a tear. So because it's Father's Day today, let me first say Happy Father's Day to all your fathers out there. But as a father myself, my job is to lead, provide, and protect, right? So the most rewarding gift to me on Father's Day is observing my children and see they are walking the path that I chose, right? So think about God. If we want to be God's children, the most rewarding thing he can see that we are following his word and that we're growing fruit and following his way. Now, for example, I'm an artist. I love drawing, coloring. And the other day, Rod Sprague told me, I don't know what you're doing to Azariah, but that kid can color. He says he stays in the line. He makes the animals the right color. I didn't even realize I was teaching him that, but because that's important to me, that's important to him. And this morning, Asher was up here. He was dancing. No one had to tell him to dance. His dad plays music. He loves it. It's right in him. Okay? So that's how we become more of who we follow. So hopefully all of us got our gardens planted before this rain. I went up and all my corn is starting to come up. And it makes me so proud because I put in the time and the effort. There's nice straight rows. I invested in this and I can see the fruit coming up. Well, God feels the same way with us. Now, I did have to get up early. There's a couple mornings I was up at 4:30 before work because this crazy weather we got, I barely had time to plant because I knew if I'd come home in the evening, it was going to be raining. So I had to sacrifice some time. And God sacrificed much more than time. He sacrificed his one and only son so we could have fruit and sprout up and grow. So not only does God lead by example, so if I'm a leader, God's a leader, right? I'm following his role. How does God lead? He says, I will send you the Holy Spirit to lead and guide you. So that's how he leads us. What about protect? How does God protect us? If you're small enough, in Matthew, he says, the little children have their own guardian angels. And in Psalms 91 says he will order his angels to protect us. So we have guardian angels. And if we don't feel safe with that, in Ephesians 6, he says, put on the whole armor of God to protect us. So he's protecting us. How does God provide for us? So I'll end with this because this is a great way to end. Philippians 4:19 says, my God shall supply all your need. Not just one or two, but all of your need, according to his riches in glory by who? Jesus Christ. That's the way, the truth, and the life right there. With that, you children are dismissed.